So now you've picked out a camera, you've picked out a lens, you even picked out the perfect cage that suits your needs to mount all of your accessories to. In this video, I'm going to be going over everything that you need to be able to start getting beautiful images out of your camera. There's definitely a philosophy that I'm using for this entire build out. The idea is that the camera body as well as the lens are the performance parts of this build out. So anything that we add to this system should not complicate that and should only help us use those performance pieces. So if they distract or get in the way, I would say that's not good gear. First things first, we need to control the light that goes into our lens. That way our shutter speed or angle can stay consistent so we can get our motion blur and so we can control the exposure of our image. In order to do that, you're gonna need what's called a neutral density or ND filter set. You can either get a full set, they go in different stops. Basically think the darkness of different sunglasses goes from very light to very dark sunglasses. Or you can get what I've chosen, which is called a variable ND. As you can see, by spinning this knob up here, I'm able to control exactly how much light comes through the filter so I can adjust my exposure accordingly on the fly. Now, the reason I've gone with a VND instead of an ND filter set is just for practicality. Typically, I'm doing run and gun shoots or I need to be very quick on my feet when I'm out in the field shooting for a client. On the other hand, a neutral density filter set where you have one that is nice and light, one that's a little bit darker, one that's a little bit darker than that, and so on and so forth, you actually have to take the filter off, find which one works and slot it in, or worse, screw it onto the lens, which just eats up a crazy amount of time. So that's why I went with VNDs. Now do your research on variable neutral density filters. There are a lot that are very high quality and you kind of get what you pay for, and there are a lot that are on the low end and you'll have a lot of issues with those, typically speaking. But look at the reviews. People have been really good about letting everybody know whether the VND causes color shift or if it creates an X pattern, the stronger you go. This particular VND is from Tilta, and it's part of the Mirage matte box. This is their matte box and VND filter sets. This matte box allows you to slot the VND perfectly into the matte box itself and take it right out. Now, I went with a system like this because I know that I was also gonna need a matte box. I've been on different music video shoots and other productions outside where we have glare from the sun going right across the front element and it just washes everything out. Of course, that works in a lot of situations where you want the glare and you want the flares. But a matte box, it allows you to control the light so you have the option for flaring, or if you need it gone, you can throw your matte box on and it will block the light from streaking across the front of your lens. Like I mentioned, this is the Mirage matte box from Tilta, and it's a very small matte box that works for my situation. Again, I have a very light setup. I don't want to be packing a lot of stuff, or mainly just taking up space. There are bigger options. You can find those in the Polar Pro Basecamp. That's a really good one that's bigger than this. I don't like their proprietary filter system as much as this one, but that's a different story. As far as this matte box go, it does all the matte box things you'd like. It has a French flag made out of carbon fiber right on the front. This allows you to control the light that hits the front. Basically, if the sun's beaming down, that blocks it there. You can, of course, twist it, but it does just have the one flag. That's maybe a con to this depending on who you are. For me, I haven't needed side flags, but I can definitely see situations where that would be useful. So if that's important to you, I'd probably find a different matte box. But at least for me, the Tilta Mirage system has been working very, very well. You can just take the VND and slip it in, and it holds it in place without any rattle. You can also just pull it straight out and stash it in your filter pocket if you need to have 0 ND. Typically, all VNDs start at 1 stop and go up from there. There are pretty much none that I've found that start at 0 stops, giving you a true, perfectly clear view with no darkness added. The amount of times that I've been covering a scene where I have to go from outside, bright sun, and then to an indoor situation, and I try to lighten it up all the way and it's still just too dark. The ability to remove your VND super fast and not have to worry about unscrewing is a huge bonus, and that's why I went with a VND system that slots into a matte box, because I can remove that one stop and get all the light that I need. The Tilta Mirage matte box attaches to your lenses pretty much like all others with a step-up ring. So I just need to step it up from 82 to 95 with the ring that's included in the package. It just simply slides on really fast, and then with the twist of a thumb screw, it's locked in place and it's not falling off. And because it mounts onto the circular step-up ring, you can twist this to whatever position you need depending on the shot. Just twist the little thumb screw right here, and it's locked in, and you have yourself a matte box. Now you might be asking, am I stuck with just the 95mm, basically proprietary filters that Tilta makes for this? And if you want the small circular ones, yes. There is a company that Tilta contracted to make all of the different filters you could want. If you want IR, NDs, infrared, neutral density filters, they have those. They have all your creative ones. So you can get a ton of different filters for this, and they're a lot cheaper than your standard big rectangular glass filters as well. You also have the option of expanding the matte box. You can see where the VND is. You can add another slot in front of it to be able to add multiple filters and stack them up. Plus, you are not stuck with just the 95mm filters that Tilta makes. There's also a slot for 4 by 5.65 filters. You just slip it in and it catches on this tooth right here. And then on this side, there's a little pin that holds it in. And you can stack up to 3 filters. Now at the moment, I don't need that many filters. I basically just need the VND, and that's pretty much all you need starting out. You may also be thinking, oh man, that means that I have to have a matte box with a French flag on my rig at all times. And the good news is Tilta thought of that. You can just pull these little 2 tabs, slide it off, and you have just your VND on the front. Or if you don't need anything, of course, you can just untwist that, pull it off, and you're back to a standard camera, especially if you want to take photos. A little note for you is that the step-up rings included by Tilta work perfectly with standard lens caps. So you can leave the step-up ring on there at all times, and you can use your lens caps. You don't have to worry about that. I've had some other step-up rings where the lens caps basically fall off, and Tilta's, it works perfectly. Now we've figured out how to control the light of our scene. After that, we have to get audio. And everybody knows that the microphones that are in any of these small cinema cameras pretty much suck. If you really need them, they're basically only good for finding your clap and lining it up in post, and that's about it. They're not really usable if you need the audio itself. So what you need is a shotgun microphone. This shotgun mic that I have is a good budget-oriented mic. It's going to get you decent sound, and you're just not going to have to worry about this microphone. You don't have a battery to charge, you don't have to worry about it integrating into your system because it's a simple 3.5mm audio jack that goes directly into every single camera out there, and it's tiny. Having something like this when you're beginning, a microphone that you don't have to think about, that gets you good enough audio, is a great starting point. After all, this video is about the gear that you need to start, not necessarily the best, craziest, most expensive gear that you can possibly get. So this is the one that I use. It's a few years old. It is the Rode Video Micro, and I don't really have many complaints about it. For the cost, for the size, for all of that, I've been really happy with it, and it's gotten me through a lot of situations and gotten me decent audio. So get yourself something small. It doesn't have to be this mic exactly. I've just had good experiences with it. But I would recommend starting out to go with a simple mic, because the last thing you want is when you're learning all the settings of your camera, dealing with setting up the whole set, you don't really want to have to worry about your audio. So get something bulletproof, something that's simple, so once you have it on your camera, you just don't have to think about it. And for anybody who's on the fence and might be already looking to upgrade from a mic like this, I don't have it, but I have heard really, really good things about the Rode Video Mic NTG. Now that is a battery-powered mic. You basically plug USB-C in and it has its internal battery. But the nice thing about that is that it still just runs a 3.5mm audio jack. So you don't have to worry about converting to XLR if your camera doesn't have it, which is huge for beginners. So if you're looking for a little bit higher quality, I've heard really good things about that microphone. Number 3 on the list is something that some people might say is not mandatory, but after you use one for a little while, you're going to disagree with those people, and that is a nice monitor. The monitor that I chose is from a company called Viltrox, and it's called the DCX3. There's also a baby brother version of it called the DCX2. The only difference between those two monitors is going to be that the one that I have, DCX3, has SDI in and out, and the DCX2 does not have any SDI. This portion is just blank aluminum. The R5C doesn't have SDI, but I do need a monitor that has HDMI. So this has HDMI in and out. It also has a headphone jack, so you can monitor from this or monitor from the camera, dealer's choice. Since I already mentioned that I have an R5C that doesn't have SDI, why did I get the one that has SDI? And it's purely in the hopes that this thing is going to be really durable. I definitely believe in buy once, cry once. So being able to purchase a monitor that has good build quality and hopefully lasts through different camera bodies is the reason that I got the one with the SDI. It is a full aluminum body, so all of this is aluminum and it becomes its own heatsink. Even the button for the battery is made out of aluminum. They didn't skimp there. It is two parts, basically the side rail that goes all the way around, and this back plate are two parts. You can see the screws that put them together. I do trust the aluminum a lot. That's another reason why I think this thing's gonna last long. As long as the electronics hold up, I think the body's in great shape. But it also allows me to trust putting F22 plates. There are airy locking pins under here as well. So I put an F22 plate on the right-hand side. That's basically for the shoulder rig that I'll be showing you guys in a later video. I also put one on the bottom. And the only thing that isn't aluminum would be the screen. So that's gonna be the most vulnerable part of any monitor. And Viltrox was able to incorporate the sunshade into effectively a screen protector when it's closed. I mean, have you ever seen a sunshade that folds down so easy, so fast, and is so thin that you would actually just want to leave it on the monitor all the time? I really haven't seen anything like that, so that is a huge feature. A fully aluminum monitor that has HDMI, SDI, I also forgot to mention USB-C power, that's really nice, and has such a functional sunshade that you're actually going to want to use and protects the monitor screen itself. Besides hopefully lasting well, that's just going to be something that we'll have to test. This is a fairly new monitor to the market. The DCX3 is also a 2000 nit display, so more than likely you won't really need the sunshade in most scenarios, but it is very nice to have, and there will be certain ones, especially with snow that's falling down, we're going to need as much brightness as we can. Now, you can't talk about the R5C and adding a monitor without discussing the weirdest decision Canon ever made on this camera. And that's the inclusion of a micro HDMI port instead of a full-size HDMI port. So here's my solution to having a micro HDMI port on the camera when all we really wanted was a full-size HDMI. Luckily, it's just this cable from SmallRig. All this short little cable is a micro HDMI to full-size HDMI adapter. The key part are these two holes that are integrated into the full-size HDMI that allow you to mount this to your cage. And all you need is a zip tie. I happen to have this very long one. You don't need that. Just get a strong one. That's all that matters. On the side of the cage, you have your HDMI port that's right here. And originally I was thinking that I could use these two holes at the top here to mount this, but it just turns out that the holes are the wrong spacing and the wrong size. So that's why we're using a zip tie. Now it's ideal to pull it as tight as you can around there. It's just plastic along the SmallRig cable and it's just aluminum that's the cage. So you're not gonna hurt anything by putting as much pressure as you can on that zip tie. Grab your flush cutters and simply trim as close as you can. And now you have the SmallRig micro HDMI to full-size HDMI attached on your camera rig. And you can see just how slim this is. I mean, as far as width on the camera goes, you're adding basically nothing to the width of the camera. Especially if you're like me and you use a handle, it's imperceptible. Everybody knows how weak a micro HDMI cable is. And I'm thinking the reason that they break so easily is because people go directly from the micro HDMI with a fairly long cable up to their monitor or to some other source. And that's a really big loop that can get caught on things and put a lot of torque onto the micro HDMI and break it. By turning that potentially very large loop that can get caught on a bunch of things into a very small little loop that folds up against the camera pretty small, that should be able to save our micro HDMI port. And of course, if your cage allows you to put a clamp on there, that's just doubling up. That's awesome. The F22 does not, and it also doesn't work with the factory protector for the R5C, so that's kind of a bummer. But so far, I've been very confident in the system, and it seems to be working quite nicely. This area is kind of tight now, but because it is mounted on a flexible zip tie, you can actually just move this out of the way, and it allows you to get access to all your ports. And I have used every single port on the side, minus the flash, at the same time with no issues and with no extra pressure on each individual port. So this still works really well. There's the audio jack, there's the micro HDMI, the USB-C fits perfect, and of course the headphone jack is completely open. And the last benefit of going with that small rig cable is that now we can use coiled full-size HDMI cables. This one is from Alvin's Cables, the link will be in the description, and I really like it because it happens to go basically straight up at the camera, and it matches perfectly, goes straight down at the monitor. So it creates a nice straight line and a nice clean look for your rig. So in summary, the 3 things that you need to really get started filming are going to be something to control the light. I like the VND that fits into the matte box because it is simple, easy to use, and it's fast if you need to get 0 ND. It's very quick. The next one, of course, is going to be your audio. Get yourself a nice shotgun microphone that works for your system and your budget. Make sure to keep it as simple as possible when you're starting out. Again, you don't want to have to be messing with audio. You basically want to have it plug in and work when you're starting. You can upgrade as you go, but get yourself something that works and you just don't have to think about. And the third thing that I personally would consider a must is going to be a nice durable monitor with a high brightness output. It allows you to see your scene, pull focus, and overall, it's one of the best things that you can do to improve your shots, is actually see what you're shooting, make sure you don't forget your batteries. These are all the things that you need to start shooting video productions for real, and let me know what system works best for you. The goal here is to be simple, light, effective, and durable. We want our money to go as far as possible. We work very hard for it, so a rig like this just works. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a good one.